Today I've called this message Faith in Action, and it's really practical in its application to us, because I was inspired last week by the powerful message that Michelle gave about faith isn't blind, but faith is obedient. And I had a whole other message that I had written out a couple of weeks ago, because I pray and God kind of leads me. He gives me a title or a word or a scripture, and then I build on that. So I had this message and I'd written out most of it, and it just wasn't sitting right with me, and I felt God just going, change direction. And I'm like, oh, righto, well, I guess all the work I've done, I guess I'll just have to do it again. And so it just flowed, and I know when God is speaking and that he wants us to hear as a church, he's got a word for us, and it's just exciting for me, because this is a practical way that we walk out our faith in our daily journey with God. And we're going to start with these controversial verses in James. And it's James 2:17. Thus also, faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. And James goes on to say in James 2:24, you see then that a man is justified by works and not by faith only. These verses have been very controversial, and there's been a lot of people that have spoken out against the book of James, because it's seemingly contradictory to the preaching or the letter that the Apostle Paul writes to the Ephesians in Ephesians 2:8. Paul says, for by grace you have been saved, through faith, and not of yourself. It is the gift of God, and not of works, lest anyone should boast. So commentators throughout the millennia have suggested that the book of James was written as like some kind of an open retort or a rebuke against Paul and the message of grace, with the letter that he wrote to the Ephesians. And one person that was very outspoken about the book of James, you might know, Martin Luther, the father of the Reformation, he says James does nothing more than drive to the law and its works.
Wow.
That's pretty full on. I mean, this guy had a massive revelation, and the Reformation came. So he really discounted the works of James, the writings of James. And it's wrongful to make this assumption, because this wrongful assumption has caused people to disregard the valuable teaching from the book of James. And it's so powerful. I love the book of James, because Paul and James' teachings are not contradictory. Those verses that we read, they're seemingly contradictory, but they are not. They are both absolutely correct in what they are trying to say. So Paul's assertion that our justification comes by faith in Jesus Christ and not by works is absolutely true. Paul is addressing people who think that they can work for their salvation through some kind of legalism, or it's like the mentality of saying, I'm a good person, I've done good things, therefore I should be able to get into heaven.
Yeah.
You know, like when we think about why we're saved, or how we're saved, or how we're going to get into heaven, when we think about this, the answer that we give ourselves should never be because I have done this, or because I did this for Jesus, or I. There should never be an I in when we think about why we're saved. It's always because of what Jesus does. It's always because of what Jesus has done for me or for us. It's always by the grace of God.
Yeah.
So what Paul is telling us is truth. The position that we are in right standing with God, has got absolutely nothing to do with us apart from our faith in Jesus Christ. It's not by the things that we do. We can never, ever, 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 ever earn our salvation. I hope I emphasise that enough. Never, ever, ever, ever. We can never do it. So that being true, how is this verse in James not contradictory? Because James says in James 2:24, you see then that a man is justified by works and not by faith only. See, it's very contradictory.
Yeah.
So we can see in this verse, when we strip it back, we can see that James is at least in agreement with Paul in the start of this statement. Because he says that justification comes by faith. But James then says, but not by faith only. So he's agreeing with Paul in the premise in the start of it. So what's James saying? Is he saying that it's grace plus works? Because that's what it seems to say, and that is still a very big contradiction. Because our salvation does not begin with God's grace and then continue on because of our good works. It just doesn't happen that way. And that's why this verse is so controversial. But Paul and James are in total agreement. There's not a disagreement here. They are addressing two different things that seem contradictory. Paul's saying you can't earn your salvation by good works. James is saying if your salvation is real, it will produce an action of good works.
Yeah, that's right.
Paul tells us that we're saved by grace through faith. James shows us that what saving faith looks like when it's lived out in action. James reveals the fruit of our salvation, a life transformed by faith. When we understand James's intended meaning of the whole book of James, we need to take the whole message and doctrine of the book of James into context. Because it's written in a context. And there's some key verses that we need to take into consideration when we're navigating the book of James. And we looked at this verse before. It's James 2:17. James says, thus also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. It's two really, really important words in here that we need to take notice of in this verse. It's works and dead. Now the Greek word for works here means deeds, actions and accomplishments. It's mainly focused on actions. It conveys the physical outworking of a principle. It's an action. And the second word in the Greek there means dead. Well, it does mean dead, but it means lifeless. And it conveys faith without action is like a spiritual corpse. Exists in name only, but there's no life. There's no pulse. It's useless and unproductive. It's inoperative. It's non-functional. It's unable to fulfill a purpose. Completely powerless. Powerful words. So essentially James is saying that faith without action is lifeless, useless and completely powerless. Let me say that again. Faith without action is lifeless, it's useless, it's completely powerless. And this is the difference between what Paul is talking about, the faith for salvation in Ephesians, and what James is talking about, that faith without action is not the working for salvation. It's the outworking from salvation. Faith in action is the product of our salvation. Yeah. We are not saved by good works. Our salvation should produce good works through us. That's the difference. And I feel like it's summed up best in this quote by Billy Graham. And I've loved this quote for years. If you can put that up, please, Joey. The gospel demands a change in us. It is not an option. It is a necessity. It is truly, if you truly encounter Christ, you will never be the same again. If you truly encounter Christ, you will never be the same again. This is a powerful statement. And it's backed up by what James is saying, that true faith is never stagnant. Faith in action is the evidence of our salvation. It's the evidence. It's the outworking of our salvation. The grace of God not only saves us, but transforms us into leading a life of action, obedience with visible fruit. Just like Jesus says to us in Matthew 7:16, if you could put that up please, Joe, you will know them by their fruits. When we truly follow Jesus, our lives must demonstrate a change. Not to earn salvation, but because it's producing the fruit of faith in us. Salvation is producing this rich fruit in us. Faith must have an action that produces change. This is real faith. If there's no evidence of transformation in our life through salvation, then that faith is dead. There should be a visible transformation in us. That's the difference between a person who is alive and a person who is dead. It's impossible for a dead person to have action and purpose. It's impossible. It's impossible for a dead person to reproduce or to have life in them. They're dead. There's a difference. And that's why salvation without fruit is faith without action. And Jesus gives us a great example of this in John 15. If you could put that up, please, Joe. John 15, 1-7. Jesus says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As a branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit, for without me you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is cast out as a branch and is withered, and they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, you will ask whatever you desire and it shall be done for you. That's faith right there. You shall ask whatever you desire and it will be done for you by abiding in the vine. That's the difference between being an alive branch and a dead branch. A branch that is alive produces fruit. And Jesus tells us that if you want to remain alive, you must be pruned. Peter also tells us this. He expresses it in 1 Peter 1:6. Please, Joe. In this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials, that the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, may be found to the praise, honour and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Our faith is demonstrated by action. When we're in the fire, our faith demonstrates our action. Our action demonstrates our faith. The way we act, the way we respond in the fiery trial demonstrates the level of our maturity in our faith. Faith and pressure, they go hand in hand. You can't do a faith walk without pressure. And that is why James also tells us in James 1:2, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your what? Of your faith produces patience. But let patience have its perfect work in you, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Our faith is demonstrated in our actions. Going through the fire most certainly demonstrates the level of faith that we have towards God. This is where the rubber meets the road, church. It demonstrates the level of our trust and faith towards God in the trials. This kind of faith demonstrates our salvation when we're going through the fiery trials. It demonstrates where our trust lies. I love this quote. Please, Joe, put this up front, by Corrie ten Boom. Most of you will know Corrie. When a train goes through a tunnel and it gets dark, you don't throw away the ticket and jump off. You sit still and trust the driver. The Bible tells us the importance of working out our faith through our actions in these trials. Hebrews 11:6, powerful chapter. But without faith it is impossible to please him, that is God. For he who comes to God must believe that he is, and that word he is means the great I am, and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. Clearly declares here that we must believe that he is. When we go through the fiery trials, we must believe and trust who God is. We must believe that he is. And if our faith and our ability to trust in who God is unshakable, that leads to an action. And that action is trust. Let's look at some of the examples because Hebrews 11 is called the Hall of Faith. It lists out a whole heap of people that by faith did things. And one of them is Noah. And Noah's action was he built. And, we just say, Noah built an ark. For 100 to 120 years, here's a man in the middle of a paddock building not a little boat, but a massive ocean liner. For 100 to 120 years. It has never rained. And he's like, there's a flood coming. There's a flood coming. And can you imagine the ridicule? Can you imagine the people passing by, the names, for not like a few months, for 100 years. The ridicule over and over. He said, he preached to everybody, and they just must have gone, you're an idiot. Like, that's old crazy Noah. Look at him building a boat in the middle of a paddock. What an idiot. That's faith. That's faith right there. That's action. That's faith with action. And Abraham. Look at Abraham. He was obedient. The promise was Isaac. He got the promise from God, and man, he had to go through a lot to get the promise. And then God says, go sacrifice him. And, I like the pictures that they show Isaac as a little boy, but he wasn't. He was a grown man. Like, for 3 days, it took the journey 3 days for him to get where he was going to be sacrificed. Can you imagine the questions and what's going through his mind? The level of faith and trust in the trial here. I mean, that is faith in action. It's absolutely. And look at Moses. He chose to not live like the Egyptians. He was a prince of Egypt. He could have lived a life of luxury, but no, by faith, he chose to follow God. And his faith in action was doing things that he didn't want to do. And because sometimes, a lot of times, our faith requires us to do things that we don't want to do. These people demonstrated their faith in God by their actions, and God wants us to demonstrate our faith by our actions. David is somebody I definitely admire. He's a man that really demonstrated his faith by his actions as well. And this is the description that God gives David himself. And we find that in Acts 13:22, please, Joe. I have found David, the son of Jesse, a man after my own heart, who will do all my will. Who will do all my will. Faith in action follows the will of God, even when things get difficult. Like Pastor Michelle preached last week, faith is obedient. Faith follows God
I think that's the rest of it. There's none left.
It's up there already.
Oh, is it? No, that's okay. Cool. But as for me, I trust in you, O Lord. I say, you are my God. My times are in your hands. This is a man that has been chased, that has been persecuted. This is a man that's hiding out in a cave. And this is what he's saying to God. But as for me, I trust in you, O Lord. I say, you are my God. My times are in your hand. The question that we need to ask ourselves constantly is our faith, is my faith alive or is it dead? Is there a visible difference? Because there is a visible difference to somebody that is spiritually alive and spiritually dead.
Yeah.
Dead faith doesn't move. It sits. It does nothing. Dead faith doesn't act. Dead faith talks but has no walk. It talks the talk, but it doesn't walk the walk. And this is the good news of the gospel, that Jesus came to bring the dead to life. Jesus came to bring the dead to life, and he can resurrect our faith, because Jesus didn't die on the cross so we could agree with him with an intellectual agreement. Jesus gave his life so we could be completely transformed. Completely. Just like Billy Graham says, I'm going to read it again. The gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ, demands a change in us. If you truly encounter Christ, you will never be the same again. Never be the same again. The question today is my faith, this is the question we need to ask ourselves, is my faith demonstrated in my actions? Am I walking the walk? Am I going to be like Noah? You know, what's God asking you to build in your life before you see the rain? Are we going to use Noah as our demonstration? Are we going to use Abraham in his obedience? Where's God taking you? Are you going to follow him without knowing all the answers, without having the map? Are you going to start taking steps by faith without knowing the end destination? Are you going to trust in him in the process?
That's good.
Are we going to use Moses? Are we going to be obedient to the call of God and be taken out of our comfort zone? Is that something we're going to do? Are we going to lay down what God's asking us to lay down in order to sacrifice for the faith? Is that action going to be outworked in us? And follow God into the place where it's unknown. You might be here today or watching online today and you say, well, my life isn't lining up with this. Or maybe you've realised that your faith is a bit lifeless, that it's belief without transformation, words without action. And maybe God's speaking to you today and saying, you've never really surrendered everything to me, because that's what Jesus wants, is our everything. He wants us to give him all of our heart. He calls us to take up our cross daily and follow after him. And this is faith in action. This faith, when we take up our cross every day of our lives, is a demonstration of the evidence of salvation. That's the real faith. When we decide, yes, Jesus, I'm going to follow you every day. I just want to finish with this challenge this week. I want to ask you as well, what does faith in action look like in our week? It might be forgiving somebody that doesn't deserve to be forgiven. It might be serving somebody that takes you out of the way to actually do something that you don't want to do, or trusting God in the trial and saying, Lord, I know you're my God. You're going to get me through this trial. I trust you. It might be taking a step of faith that you've been avoiding. Faith's like a muscle. It needs to be exercised to grow. If we do not exercise this muscle, our muscles will fade away. It's in the natural. The same in the spiritual. I love what Kev says, our mentor Kev Dales. He says, if you want to be a mechanic, you've got to do mechanical things. If you want to be a doctor, you've got to do doctoring things. If you want to be a person of faith, you've got to do faith things. That's where it's the outworking of our actions. We're not saved by it. It's just the product. It should come natural to us through our salvation that we walk out this faith. I'm going to open up this altar today. And if there's anything that's spoken to you today, I want you to come and just say, Lord, because that's the great thing about Jesus, is it doesn't matter how you started. It doesn't matter so much about the middle of your journey. What matters is about the end. What matters is about how you finish. And Jesus is there at any time for us to say, Jesus, I need help in this area. Jesus, I'm here. God doesn't want us to wear a mask. He wants us to come as we are. It's not about the yesterday. It's about where we're going. That's what he wants, is the finish. So the altar's open today. If you struggle with faith, if you're struggling with anything at all, if you want healing or whatever it is, please don't think that this altar's a scary place. It's not. This is where we come and encounter God. This is a place of humility where we step out and say, Jesus, I want you. I don't care who's looking. I don't care who's up the back. I don't care. I want you, Jesus. So I just want to encourage you with that today. This place is a place where you can encounter the Lord. I love you, church. And I just want to encourage you too, that these things are practical. Please don't just walk out of here and forget this. Walk out of here and say, Lord, where are you taking me? Where's the faith? Where's the action that you want me to start walking out? God won't call you to a place where you can't handle. He's not going to do that to you. He loves you. He's for you. He's not going to set you up for failure. He wants you to grow in faith. Yeah, it's scary. I guarantee you that it's scary. But the rewards for walking that out is absolutely wonderful. It's a depth of relationship. It's a place where you know that you trust the Lord and that He is never going to let you down. He's never going to leave you. He's never going to forsake you. He loves you, church. Bless you guys.